Welcome back to the War Room for all the media producers out there in the mainstream media. We either have the greatest hero in the early stages of this fight against an invisible enemy or a total charlatan, okay? If you listen to the mainstream media, relentless. That hydroxychloroquine and all the other combinations are nothing but voodoo. So, Dr. Zelenko, how do you counter that? You've now seen this onslaught that's coming, and I realize that you're saying that the studies are not done. Are you coming out with a paper? Are you going to come up with some research? How are you going to back up? Since in the field, you saved all the folks in New Rochelle. How do we actually take it to the next level so you can combat this relentless media narrative that you're a huckster and that this is a dangerous thing that Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, the War Room pandemic guys, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, that everybody's pushing?
First of all, correction. It's not New Rochelle. It's in Monroe, New York, just to be correct.
Okay, Monroe.
And thanks. And the way I really have no patience for political whores that sell their souls for money and politics. So I don't listen to them. but what I do, I'll say the following. History and science is objective truth. History will prove who was on the right side of history, who was on the wrong side of history. Galileo and Copernicus, it took them 50 years for their ideas to be accepted. I hope it doesn't take 50 years. Now with the internet, hopefully it just takes a day to spread the truth, and people will see. Now, I am coming out with a study, yes. It's going to be published in the higher journals, I hope. And the only reason why I didn't come out with it before, it's only been 4.5 weeks, and I've been seeing 100 patients a day. You know, Dr. Dudier in France has 800 people on his team. I have 5. I mean, I was working 21-hour days with 8 kids that I have. So I don't understand when I was supposed to come up with the data while I'm in the middle of treating hundreds of patients. But now things have calmed down. I put together the data. It's being analyzed by the highest level researchers. Because I'm not a researcher. I'm just a simple doctor on the front line. And the data is going to come out, and it's going to show the following. 95% reduction of death. 95% reduction in intubation and hospitalization. This data is exactly consistent, actually it's a little better, than Dr. Dudier, Raoul in France, in Marseille, France, where he doesn't use zinc, but still he intervenes early, and he had, I think, 88% reduction in death. And the government of Brazil actually implemented my protocols 3.5 weeks ago in a few hospitals and clinics, and they had a 95% reduction in death. They published a study. So now you have 3 continents, 3 doctors, groups who don't know each other, basically, all coming out and saying, and look at the great novel idea. If you treat early, you get better results. Wow, genius. It's unbelievable. Now, you're going to ask me, why is common sense not ruling? Well, I'll tell you the following. This is an election year. The president, for good or bad, and it doesn't matter my politics, it's irrelevant, but he came out backing this drug. It's a matter of record. He said it. I have a good feeling about it. I think it's going to be the biggest game changer. This happens to be an election year. Half the country doesn't want him to be president. It's been relentless war on his reputation, right? So anything that they can do to undermine, not to give him a victory, they'll do. It's just simple politics. It's logic, okay? So they rather see the enemies of humanity, I would call them, rather see this country's economy burn, people die, than to give the president a win. That's number one. Number 2, go ahead.
No, go. Keep going. Keep on the roll. Keep going.
I thought through this, by the way. It's a multifactorial what's going on. Number 2, listen, the drug companies have invested millions of dollars. I like the drug companies. They save life. And they invested millions of dollars, billions of dollars in development of treatments and vaccines. And it's great. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But the fact is, I came up with a solution, but the $20 essentially resolves the problem. I'm sure that's not a very good thing for people that invested billions of dollars. And I'm sorry, but my focus is not billions of dollars, it's human life. Number 3, there's a lot of ego in the medical community. You know, some hick doctor, Hasidic doctor in upstate New York, thinks of a treatment for $20 where these Harvard researchers that sit and behind a desk thinking of ideas weren't able to. Could you imagine? And number 4, which is a real big problem, doctors are afraid of liability. They're afraid to use these drugs because they're not familiar with them, or because of the negative PR, because of the litigious nature of the society. So there's a lot of obstacles in using these drugs. The only thing is, none of it matters to me. I'll tell you why. Two years ago, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I lost my right lung. It was called pulmonary artery sarcoma. It has 100% death rate. And for some reason, I'm still around. Doesn't make sense. So I'm looking at life from the other world in. I had already said goodbye to my children, essentially, emotionally. So when someone goes through that and is on the razor's edge of life and death, so then you realize that's really important. So I have no fear except for God. I really learned how to think outside the box. I actually developed my own treatment, believe it or not. And I realized it's not me, it's God. So, there's a saying from one of my mentors that he was being tortured by the KGB. And they took out a gun and they put it to his head and they said, this gun has made many people talk. So he answered them, maybe someone who has one world and many gods. But someone who has one God and two worlds, it's ineffective.
A genius. Okay, let me ask you. Keep going. That's a great quote. So
all this opposition by these, I don't know, I call them like maggots or whores. I don't know what it is. It's this epitome of evil that put politics and profit before human life. I have a zero tolerance for, and they're irrelevant to me, if that answers your question.
Let's go. New York City, the New York folks are the savviest and most common sense in the world. Since the word got clearly out on this with Rudy, and we were on WABC, and Rudy was on WABC, and you had a big group that was saying, hey, this is something you ought to think about if your doctor recommends it. And we noticed that the doctor-nurses teams did not have the casualty rates they had in Italy and others. Was it used, you think, in New York? Because I'm hearing now that people are saying, oh, it wasn't used or where it was used. I think the New York Post has got today where it was used in the New York City hospitals. They didn't see any results or any positive results. What do you know about what actually happened in the hospitals and down on the front line of the battlefield in New York City?
Listen, I don't think, unfortunately, when someone is at the stage where they're on a respirator with acute respiratory distress syndrome, no matter what you do, there's going to be a 50 to 60% mortality rate. So has there been some success? Maybe. But really,
what about? But I'm saying as a prophylactic. I'm saying as a prophylactic for the doctors and nurses. Was it used as a prophylactic for doctors and nurses?
Sure. Any smart doctor that I know of is on this stuff, including myself.
Boom, Doctor, I just got to say it's been a great joy listening to you because, first of all, we can just tell you're just such a solid guy. You bring up a KGB story to make your point. You are on the team, my friend. One thing I wanted to ask you, the FDA keeps putting out these guidelines sort of making doctors feel a little bit threatened about prescribing this stuff. And I, in fact, talked to a doctor up in Westchester, one of the county health commissioners, about 2.5 weeks ago, and he said that they were just terrified about even prescribing it because of all of the messaging that they were getting from the FDA and even from the governor at that point. Now, go forward another week, and they were prescribing it to everybody. But they're saying, FDA is saying they don't want to see it outside of a hospital setting or a clinical trial due to heart risk. I think you've kind of answered that. But
first of all, I'm in direct contact. Stephen Hahn, the head of the FDA, literally called me on my cell phone. And I've been dealing with him directly. And actually, I organized it with a group, a very large hospital consortium from Long Island. Can't mention the name yet until next week because we're coming out with a study, a research study we're going to start, where we're going to treat 750 patients. It's going to be a randomized controlled study, the kind that all these researchers worship. And it's going to take a few months. So, listen, let me give you an analogy. This is very important. Imagine Washington, D.C. is being carpet bombed, right? And would it make sense for Dr. Fauci to say, I think we need to do a study to see which bullets work the best? It may take 4 months, but we need to study it. Or would you use any bullet available to knock the plane out of the sky? So what's the difference? The difference is that we're being carpet bombed by an invisible enemy, so we have a perception of peacetime. But in reality, this is not peacetime. This is battlefield medicine. This is World War III. So to wait 4 months to do the results of a study and let an excess of a few 100,000 people die unnecessarily, I think is a crime against humanity. So,
Dr. Zelenko,
yeah.
we've got to bounce, but we want to know, we've got so many questions from the audience. Do you have a website or Twitter feed? How do people get access? A lot of people asking about dosage and everything like that, and I don't want to get into that, and I think you do, but is there a website, Twitter feed? How do they get more access to you?
Twitter, it's at Zev, that's zebra, E, V as in Victor, _ doctor, DR.
When is this paper? Is this being peer reviewed right now? When do you anticipate your counter offense against the mainstream media is going to really start with your paper? What's your timing on this?
Next week.
Next week the paper will be out.
God willing.
Do you have a website?
No. I'll figure something out.
Okay, fine. We'd love to have you back on, Dr. Zelenko. Jack, it's been a great honor to have you on. You're truly an American hero.
Doctor, thank you so much. Really,
God
really
bless you
great
all.
guy.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Dr. Vladimir, this is what a fourth turning's about. You're going to see all kind of characters in this as you go forward. He who is high will be low, and he who is low will be brought forward. Dr. Zelenko, very providential. Terminal cancer patient.